this is one of those stories that is going to creep up on us as a country. And probably, arguably already has, given that countries like South Korea have way outdistanced us in terms of average person's access to broadband internet access and wide diversity in availability, is a ruling that came down in the U.S. District Court for the District of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, which is the historically, I don't know, all the way back to the founding of the country, but in recent years has been fair, the stomping grounds, the originating grounds for Supreme Court justices. Justice Thomas was on that court. Justice Roberts was on that court. Justice Scalia was on that court. Justice Ginsburg was on that court. The Robert Bork, who was an attempted justice, was on that court. Ken Starr was on that court. And right now, 10 of the 14 appointees on that court were appointed by Republican presidents, 4 of them by Democratic presidents. There are 2 openings, and those appointees from the Obama administration apparently being held up by Republicans in Congress. I don't have all the details on that. But this court has ruled this morning that net neutrality, the idea that the company that you're connected to watch to access the internet, can't say to you, Disney paid us $1 million a year, so we're going to deliver their pages really fast to you. But the New York Times didn't, or the Thom Hartmann show didn't pay us $1 million a year, so their pages are going to load, 3 or 4 seconds slower. Or there's parts of the internet we'd really rather you didn't visit, so we're going to block them. Or if you're using a fair amount of bandwidth, even though we say, hey, this is how many megabits per second you've got, all this kind of stuff. If you're using a lot of that, we're going to charge you more money. Or we're not going to give you access to 9/11 emergency information, or et cetera, that now, if this court ruling stands, private corporations basically that are delivering broadband internet service to you and me can say, we're going to determine the terms under which you're going to receive that access and how that service is going to function. And Art Brodsky is with us. He's the communications director for Public Knowledge, which is a Washington, D.C.-based public interest group working to defend citizens' rights in this digital age. Publicknowledge.org is their website. Art, welcome to the show.
It's, I think listening to you just a couple minutes is more progressive radio than I've heard in a long time.
Thank you, Art.
It's gone silent here in Washington.
Yeah, unfortunately. Although there's still Sirius and XM and the internet and Free Speech TV on Dish Network Channel 9415, and we're on all of those. So, and they're all available in DC. But in any case, the internet. And speaking of the internet, did I summarize this case? Are there pieces of this that I missed or nuance that I missed? Because I haven't had an opportunity to actually read the decision and dig into it, which is what you guys do.
Right. Let me just put it on a little bit different grounds.
Okay.
What the court said was that the authority that the FCC claimed to regulate, say, what Comcast did to its subscribers in throttling BitTorrent was not given to them by the Communications Act.
Right. Okay. Now, for our listeners who don't know what throttle and BitTorrent is, what Comcast, it was Comcast, right?
Right. It was Comcast.
What Comcast did was they noticed that there were some of their subscribers who were using a lot of bandwidth, and it turned out that those people were using BitTorrent. They were using these programs and websites and technology, peer-to-peer technology and whatnot, to download movies and music, and in some cases even bootlegged movies and music or podcasts or whatever. And so they just blocked these sites, blocked access to these sites for those.
Or they slowed down the traffic.
Or they slowed. Right. In fact, you're right. That's the only thing they did, didn't they? They didn't.
Yeah, I mean that's right.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it wasn't exactly clear how much capacity some of these people were using either.
Right. Right. So the FCC said no, you can't do this. The Comcast took it to court. The court said, yeah, the FCC doesn't have the authority to tell you can't do it. So where are we at now?
We're at a very interesting place. And we should note, by the way, that one of the things the FCC has going on, even as we speak, is a proceeding to put in some formal net neutrality rules. And these are the things you were talking about a moment ago in terms of slowing down websites and that kind of thing.
Right.
Now, those proposed rules have the same basis in law that the actions that the court struck down. So it'll be up to the commission over the next few days to determine what their next step is. And
isn't it up to Congress to change or recalibrate the laws under which the commission operates?
No. Well, yes, it is, but there are things the commission can do by itself.
I see.
Because as I'm sure as listeners of your program know, Congress doesn't legislate very quickly, if at all, these days.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So, or fortunately, depending on what the outcome is.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
And the fact of the matter is that as we stand now, consumers have zero protection from any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Before, company might do it, but they'd get smacked by the FCC. Now there's nothing. And if we wait for Congress, which could take, who knows, 4, 5, 6 years to pass a law, if ever,
right,
that would mean that there'd be no recourse for consumers.
Yeah, net neutrality has been before Congress for well over a decade, hasn't it?
Well,
in various forms and at various times?
It's actually been basically since 2006.
Okay.
And that was because of an ill-conceived decision that the former FCC made in 2005.
Well, I used to run CompuServe forums back in the 80s.
Wow, I was on CompuServe.
Yeah, well,
cool.
I was the whiz up. I basically owned and ran the Mac forums, the PC forums, a whole bunch of them. We had 20 of them, Nigel Peacock and I all together. But in any case,
if you remember,
even back then there was discussion about net neutrality.
Not as much, because back in those days, we had thousands of ISPs.
Right.
Certainly by the mid-'90s
right,
and the early '90s, we had thousands of them. Now you notice they're shrunk down to.
But I can tell you, H&R Block was very concerned about this. who owned CompuServe, and we just have a minute left. We're talking with Art Brodsky, publicknowledge.org, the website. Art, there has to be a balance between, on the one hand, the government, like in China, saying, here are websites you may not go to. We're going to control this. And on the other hand, corporations saying, here's the rules with regard to what websites you can go to and which ones you can't. Either end of that spectrum is a form of tyranny, is it not?
It is, and there's an easy middle way to fix it.
And that is?
You go back to what was happened before 2005, where Internet access, not the Internet, not the servers, not the search engines, not the websites, Internet access provided by phone companies and cable companies is under the regulatory authority of the FCC as determined by the Communications Act. That was the decision that was taken in 2005 under a little sort of regulatory shell game. The FCC on its own motion can reverse it, and it would make life a lot easier for everybody.
So the FCC can overrule the court?
It's not overruling the court. The FCC is what the court said was, you can't do it this way, but you can, they left the door open for doing it another way.
I see. Okay. Well, that's actually sort of good news. It's going to take
today, Tom.
It's going to take some pressure from all of us. Art Brodsky, you can get all the whole story over at publicknowledge.org, and let your congressman know you're in favor of net neutrality. Thanks, Art.
My pleasure.
Thanks for dropping by.